Hi and welcome to Dr. Rod's Bike Surgery. Now this week I face rather a special challenge because all this pile of bits here by the end of the programme should be assembled into a complete and running motorcycle. This week my guest is Patrick Kennedy, who's bought this 850 Suzuki chopper as a project bike in bits and has come to me to ask if I can give him a hand to put it all together. But the good news for Patrick is I actually know something about the history of this bike. Hi Patrick, this is the final part of the jigsaw puzzle I see you got there.
Yes, that's right, Rod.
Right.
It's come to us finished from the painter's rush job.
Right, it's a beautiful looking paint job too. But you actually got this bike then as effectively a pile of bits. You haven't seen this bike together?
This was a pile of salvageable pieces that came to me that had been languishing in a shed waiting to be done. And I found out that you had a hand in this bike. At one stage.
Indeed I did, yes, yes. I mean, you've actually found the right man. I didn't realise until I started to look at these bits and pieces, but I actually did the original engineering on this bike. I'm sure you're aware the frame has been altered from standard. All this has been cut down and converted to take this custom tank. And yes, I have to admit to that. This was one of my projects.
Seems to be a nice job, but I'm hoping that we can get it all together and get it running.
Right, shall we go and get some spanners out?
Yeah, let's crack on.
Okay, right. Right, we've now got the engine on the workbench here, so let's have a crack at putting the frame on. The first thing you'll notice is we've used my favourite pink fluffy blanket, which is to stop anything getting too scratched. And this technique is a lot easier than trying to get the engine into the frame. We've also bandaged the frame up, and I have to admit to doing this a little bit earlier because it's a bit time consuming. And the idea of all this bandaging is to stop the paint on the frame getting damaged when it goes over the engine, because it's inevitable that we're going to have to wrestle it about a bit. If you want to take that end of the frame, and I'll take the back, and then hopefully, if we swivel it over, we should be able to lower that into place like that. Now this might be quite a tight fit. They usually are a little bit tricky to get on, but of course on this bike, the frame's been significantly altered as well, which gives us even less space to work with. How are you doing at that side? Yep. Right, I'll just make sure I haven't got any of these wires tangled up, and we're very nearly in position for this rear engine bolt there. On this particular design, which is fairly common with lots of big Japanese bikes, we've got engine plates, which are these small triangular pieces of metal, which all serve to hold bolts together. This engine plate assembly goes at the front of the bike here. So do you want to have a go at popping that in? Now when you're dealing with very large lumps of metal like this, of course you're working with things which are very heavy and difficult to manoeuvre. So I found it's a lot easier to put the engine sideways on the bench first and then offer the frame onto it. Wrapping the frame up with old bandages or rags saves scratching that very expensive finish that Patrick's gone to so much trouble to get. And the final tip is to put all the engine bolts in loosely before tightening anything up, and that makes sure that everything is correctly aligned. So that's all the engine bolts now in place. The next step is just to tighten a few up, and then we're going to turn the whole bike over. But of course what we're doing here is actually giving the bike hand treatment when this was originally mass produced on a production line run by computers. So a lot of the techniques that we're using here aren't what you'd originally see at the factory, but this is all down to the hand building of custom motorcycles. Just need a few sockets to tighten some of these up, and then what we're going to do is spin the whole thing over, and it should start to look like the bare bones of a motorcycle if we've done a good job. Let's see how we've got on. How are you doing at your side?
Yeah, getting there.
Right. We don't need to tighten everything up fully at this stage, because there is one more engine mounting to go on at the other side. You will also find as well that, what we've done here in order to customise this bike is start with the standard frame and then modify it. But of course some people will buy an aftermarket frame or even have a frame specially made, and in that case the original engine bolts may not fit at all and you may have to customise the whole thing. That's particularly true if you're working with expensive or imported American things, which in many cases simply don't fit at all, and you've got to re-engineer everything while it's on the bench. So Patrick, you've been riding bikes for quite a while, I believe. And you've done quite a bit of mileage on bikes, I believe, didn't you? You did some European touring? Or?
Yes, I've been across Europe on my bike, and been to lots of rallies and lots of good parties and stuff, and that's basically what the whole lifestyle is about, and just getting out and enjoying things and meeting people and keeping
great when the sun shines, isn't it?
It's nice, it has its bad moments sometimes when you're sliding around in a big mud bath, but hell, that's a party and that's a weekend and that's the way to do it, isn't it?
What's the furthest you've been to a party then?
We ended up in South America. As luck would have it, we ended up meeting the head of a very famous tribe, the tribe called Warani tribe, who live in the Amazon, and they're a tribe of headhunters. And
that sounds really scary.
It was quite scary at the time, and it was even scarier when they invited us to go and live in their village for a week.
Good heavens.
We wasn't sure whether we were on the menu or, or what we were going to be, but it was actually absolutely a fantastic experience. It was a life-changing experience for everybody who went.
We've still got quite a daunting pile of bits here. Some of these bits are brand new, aren't they? But am I right in thinking most of these parts have been refurbished?
Yes, but basically everything except for the mud guards and the tank and the oil cooler. Everything else has been salvaged from the original bike.
Right, let's get back then. Right, next thing is to pop the drive shaft on here. Because it's a shaft drive bike, there's no chain. There's a flange at the back of the gearbox there, if you can see that. There's a flange there that meets it. So if you can offer that up, I've got these 4 special bolts, which will pop in to hold it all together. Now these are actually special high tensile bolts, and it's quite important that you use the genuine ones, rather than something from the hardware shop. And what we're going to do then is assemble the whole rear suspension around the drive shaft. Now, this is probably the easiest way to build the bike, but if you were just doing some servicing or maintenance work on it, you wouldn't have to strip all the back end off to get to this. Right, that's the drive shaft assembly in place. What I want to do now is have a go offering the swing arm in, but just before we do that, the swinging arm bearings need to go into there. And here we've got a taper roller bearing on each side. I've got new bearings and I've put fresh grease on them. If you pop that over, and there's the other one. And these are the bearings that the whole rear suspension pivots on. Lovely. Okay. If you can slide that in now, what we need to do is offer the drive shaft through that. And it can rattle on the inside of the swing arm, that's not too much of a problem. And that hopefully will now clear those bolts and sit into the frame. This job really is much easier if there are 2 people to do it. It can be quite tricky if you're doing this alone, because these parts are quite large and heavy, and it does require a little bit of waggling. Now, if you have had parts powder coated, it's wise to be aware that that can add an extra thickness of coating to the metal, and sometimes that'll need dressing up with a file before everything will quite slot together smoothly. In this case, we just had to persuade the swing arm a little bit before it's finally slotted into place. Right, that's the swing arm in place, but just to support it now, what we really need is a shock absorber on this side. If you have that one handy, that's great, and that should just slide over the top there and hook into that eye. Look at that, looks like it was made for it. Now that's the suspension fitted and connected up, but of course this bike shouldn't have 1 shock absorber, it should have 2. But we've still got all the drive assembly to go on here for the shaft drive, and the other shock absorber fits onto that. So what we've got next is this great big lump here. And this mammoth part of the machine is actually the rear drive for the wheel, and this is what converts the rotation of the shaft drive into the rotation for the wheel. I'm afraid I have rather a bad habit of referring to this as a differential, but of course any engineer will know that it isn't. It's merely a crown and pinion assembly, but nonetheless it's a beautiful piece of engineering. If I can hook that in there, and the idea is hopefully we can engage that onto the end of the drive shaft. And again, this is simply because we're assembling this in a slightly different sequence to if you were doing this as part of a maintenance routine. There we go, that's in. And now, I may just have to rotate that to engage it on the splines on the drive shaft. And eventually, that'll hook into place and it'll just bolt up. Alright, just have to feed these in by hand, but then that's the rear drive assembly in place. And that's how your shaft drive works. So it is a rather more complicated setup than with a chain, but of course once it's in place and set up, you don't need to do any maintenance with this at all, and it should run quite reliably for many, many years. The other advantage with shaft drive as well, of course, is that there's nothing to adjust, so you don't have to keep moving the wheel backwards in the suspension to reset your chain tension. Yes. And that has effects on the way the bike handles. It's because nothing on the steering geometry of the bike changes when you make adjustments. And that's it for part 1. Come back and join us in part 2 when hopefully all the rest of the bike will be built. This week my guest is Patrick Kennedy, who's bought this 850 Suzuki Chopper as a project bike in bits and has come to me to ask if I can give him a hand to put it all together. Next step, let's have a go at getting the back wheel in. You've got the back wheel there, haven't you?
Yep, got it right here.
I want to hoist that up here.
Right.
What I'm going to do now is pivot the bike over forwards. There we go. And if you can just pop the wheel in between the swing arm and the drive shaft, and I'll lower it down to you. Now the splines on there actually engage onto a spline in the back wheel. So what we should be able to do is just hook that in. Again, this can be quite tricky if there's only one of you. And you have to do this by yourself if you have a rear wheel puncture at the side of the road.
Put it down a little bit more.
So it's just getting that. Once it's hooked on in the right place, it'll just click into place. Once you've done it a couple of times, it becomes second nature. There we go. Now that should actually fit in a little bit further. It's not quite on the splines. So if I take the weight of the bike, if you just waggle the wheel a little bit, it should push in towards me. And nearly. Yeah, that's the one. That's perfect. Right,
I've got
that's quite safe for the moment. Next, wheel spindle. This is what holds the wheel in. And this goes all the way through the back of the bike. Now, there's a couple of different spacers on there, and it's quite important that the spacers go in the right order. So what we've done is carefully taken them off and kept them in the sequence they came out. With a spacer there, with this bracket here, that's actually the mounting bracket for the rear brake caliper, and then with a spacer outboard of it. So with a little bit of light grease on there, it doesn't need too much. That now goes into there, and all we do is assemble the spacers in exactly the same order onto that side. So that's first that one. The rear brake caliper mounting bracket goes in next, but let's just pop that one in behind it because I'll have a little bit more room to do it. Can you just pop that brake caliper mounting bracket into that gap for me?
That way, yeah.
If you pop it above my hand, that's the one. And the other way around. That's the way, yeah.
It.
It's all part of this big jigsaw puzzle of figuring out how it was first assembled. That's it, and that should now just slide through. And with the rubber mallet, would you like to tap that all the way through?
Certainly.
And what you'll find is when it reaches that shoulder, that larger diameter on the spindle needs to hook into the end of the swing arm spindle. Doesn't matter too much about that for now.
This slot needs to go in.
Doesn't really matter.
No.
Just pop it all the way through. Brilliant.
And there we go.
And big washer, big nut on the other side, and that holds the wheel on. Now we've still got to mount up the rear brake assembly. So for the time being, I'm not going to tighten this up. We'll put all that on first, and then we'll bolt it all up solid. But there's your bike with the engine in and a back wheel in it. Now, we were never actually going to build a complete bike in a half-hour show, so I hope you'll excuse us by cheating slightly. We've now put the bike up on blocks, which means it's a bit easier to get to the front end to put the forks and front wheel in. Patrick, if you want to pass me the bottom yoke now, we can start assembling the steering head. This simply slides up into the steering head bearings in the frame there. That's the bottom steering head bearing. As that goes through, if you just support that, there's a top bearing. And again, I've cheated slightly by pre-greasing these. And that adjuster nut now spins down over the top. Now this, of course, is the major structural part of the steering on the bike. So this does need to be set up quite carefully. Ideally, if you just let go of that now, that should flop from one side to the other. So if I slacken that off slightly, and that's a little bit better. The problem with that is, of course, if it's too sloppy, the front end will waggle about. So that feels more or less okay for now. But what I'm going to do is assemble the whole thing, and then we'll check the adjustment later on when it's all in one piece. Right, next, let's just try popping the fork legs in. If you want to slide that one in up through that bottom yoke there, and with a couple of pinch bolts which will hold it in place. If I just hold that steady. In fact, I'll pop this one in while you're doing that. The fork legs themselves are, of course, handed. In other words, one has to go in the left and one has to go in the right, because they're slightly different at the bottom. And there we go. Is that sliding through okay there?
No, it's a bit...
Right, putting up a bit of a struggle.
Yes, just a little screwdriver and we can sort this out.
And these are actually clamped up in the bottom yoke with a slot at the back there. So yeah, if you just pop that slot open with a screwdriver gently, and then that should, that's it, that's going in now, isn't it? That's slackened off, isn't it? Yep. Okay. Is that going in there? Right. Bit of a squeeze, is that one?
It's probably the powder coating.
It could be, yeah. You're always going to get problems like this when you're building something that's had all these lovely finishes put on, but it's always worth the struggle. Is that going?
No.
Right, if you just pop those 2 bolts out, and I'll pop a screwdriver into that slot and just open it out slightly. There we go. If we do that, is that any better? There we go.
That's it.
That, now she's going. Yeah, it's just getting it started, wasn't it? Now at this point we don't know exactly what height the fork legs need to be. If you slide that up a little bit higher, what I'd like to do is fit the top yoke next, and then we can see roughly whereabouts it is. So the top yoke, we've actually put the handlebars on already. I'd usually put those on a little bit later, but this might just save us a few minutes. That pops over the top there, and if we're lucky, that'll just tap down into place. And might just need the assistance. No, that's gone in. Thought we might have had to tap that with a rubber hammer. There we go, that's fine. Now you can see the fork legs are actually a little bit low. So that wants to come up in the yokes until the top nut just sits above there. Since you last saw us, we've made quite a lot of progress bolting bits and pieces onto the bike, and it's now starting to look quite impressive. Patrick, what do you think?
It's starting to take shape, Rod. It's really looking nice, and we've got nice panels on, and we've got mudguard fitted.
That's right.
It's starting to take shape.
Yeah, so the tail light's now in place. We've got the rear brake connected. That was fairly straightforward. Right. We thought that might be tricky, but it's behaved itself for us.
Worked out really well, that one.
These beautiful polished footrest hanger plates are there. That'll help to support the exhaust system. And of course, round at the front end of the bike, we've now got the headlamp on, the speedos there. The front mudguard, of course, is in place, and this beautiful oil cooler, which really sets the bike off with these 2 impressive braided steel hoses over the top of the engine. So that really is looking smart. We've still got a little way to go before it's up and running, but we're still on schedule, and we might just make it. What I'd like to do next is fit the carburetors, which you've got there ready to pop on, I believe. Right. So if I pop round the other side, if you'd like to offer them up to the hoses on the cylinder head, and hopefully they'll just pop on. And if I can just support that at that side, and these just push onto these rubber bushes, there, which we've had to buy new ones for, incidentally, because they perish with age. Okay, that should just push in. Are you ready?
Yep.
And they will want.
And that's it.
That's it. At that side, there we go.
That's it.
There they go. Still some air filters to go on there. We need to connect the cables up, but I'll take this final bit of bandaging off. Now we can see the frame in all its glory, and that's protected it from any kind of accidents or scratches while all this slot's gone together. And there we go. Isn't that beautiful? Right. So next, petrol tank, seat, exhaust system to go on.
Some engine oil, and away we go.
We're really there. So next, you're going to be riding the bike. Since you last saw us, we've put all the finishing touches to the bike except the electrical system. And fortunately, my friend Ferret of Ferret's Custom Electricery is here to help us finish off all the electrics. So how's it going, Ferret? Have you got everything wired up and sorted?
As it happens, yep, the bike is in fact ready to rock now. We've got the battery in, and we've built a complete harness from scratch using quality materials, using the same colour wires that the bike would have had if the bike had been built like this when it was new.
Fantastic.
And it's ready to rock. When I start on a machine like this, as I did with this one, it was beautiful to look at, all the parts were there, but there was no life in it. It wasn't going to go anywhere because there was no electrics on it. And now, as you're about to find out, it is ready to rock.
Marvellous. So this is all sorted out, ready to go?
Absolutely, just turn the key, press the button.
Right, sounds like the moment of truth, Patrick.
It's about time we sorted it out then, isn't it?
Well, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, why not? We'll give it a go.
Right, fingers crossed. Whoa!
Hey, we have liftoff.
At this juncture, now the bike is running, it's very important to make sure that the battery is charging, because then we know that when we're out on the road, we're not going to come to a sudden and abrupt stop with a flat battery.
So you can test that while it's running like this?
We can indeed. It has to be running. In order to test that, we just use a standard multimeter that's available in any decent electrical hardware shop. And it's simple.
I've seen those, but I'm not sure everyone knows how to use
Well, it's
one.
a bit of a black art, it has to be said. If the moon's in Taurus and there's an R in the month, then you've got a chance of getting it right. but basically we just connect the black wire to the negative terminal of the battery.
Can I hold that
That's
for you?
good. The red wire to the positive terminal of the battery.
And this tells us what's happening on
that
the
tells you
battery
how
then.
many volts that the battery is receiving from the charging system, and in this case we've got 15, which, well, we know that's not going to go flat. It's a 12 volt system. It means that the coils, the lights, all of the whole system is obtaining that voltage when you turn it on, which means you're going to have very nice bright lights, big fat sparks, and she'll go like a rocket.
They do all that talking with a gun. They'll shoot them as fast as they come. But a million new voices will be found. Their heads are held high, the braver ones. 'Cause there's a riot in the streets, hiding in the dark, waiting for the light of day. When they call out their warning, we can hear what they say. 'Cause there's a riot in the streets.
Right, what's she like to ride, Patrick?
It's very smooth. Suspension needs a little bit of tweaking here and there.
Yeah,
It sounds absolutely fantastic.
it certainly does. Yeah.
And I mean, it looks really nice going down the road, and I'm very happy with it. It's looking, from this pile of bits we had
It's incredible,
to this,
really.
it's just like, you know.
I think we deserve a bit of
I think so.
congratulations
A slap
for that.
on each other's back. Why
That's
not?
come out
Yeah.
fantastically well, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
it looks really, really nice. And
Great.
as I said, we'll take it back in and do a little bit of tweaking to the
Yeah.
suspensions, and I think it should really handle nicely then.
Yeah, a little bit of setting up,
Yeah.
but it's not surprising, really,
No.
considering what we started with.
No, exactly. And I
Brilliant.
mean, you're going to get them few little bits that you're not happy with, and it probably would suit different riders of different weights
Of
as well.
course, yeah.
So I mean, at the end of the day, it's really, really nice.
She's handling okay too.
It's handling fine, yeah. It's just you can feel it wallow just a slight bit, so it just needs a bit of fine tuning.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
we can sort that out, and then I think it's just a matter of getting it out and riding it and enjoying
Great.
it.
Major success.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Fantastic.
in time for the sunshine.
And
too.
that's it. It's got to be done, isn't it? So
Fantastic. And don't forget to come back next week to see the next patient in Dr. Rod's bike surgery.